I mean, if you approach life thinking about personal brand and observing, I tell people that the easiest way to learn what brand you'd like to have is to just watch other people's behaviors. And some of the best mentors I have and have had in my career, I call them negative mentors. They're not positive mentors, right? They are people who have misbehaved or acted inappropriate, and you watch the impact or the wake that leaves. And that, I think, has framed me more than anything.
Hi, I'm Nick Warner. As a dad, a lucky husband, and as a business coach, I value people and relationships above all else. But next is winning, sustainability, and healthy culture. I've been a business owner for 25 years and served for decades as a special advisor to business and government leaders at all levels. Let's just say I've seen some stuff. My passion and my expertise are helping motivated professionals and businesses find the highest level confluence of what they want in life and business. This is what it feels like to be together at the top. Thank you to our sponsors, Scholl's Brick and Rogaski, Three Bridges Consulting, Kathy Olson at Ships and Trips, and Connect Strategies. Mike Mazza is an American businessman in Tampa, Florida. Unlike so many other top executives and all the other guests we've interviewed for the show, Mike has been with one company his entire adult career. Moss Construction wasn't messing around when it made Mike president of three of their largest economies, Florida, Texas, and my home state of California. Mike oversees business operations of big projects including hotels, apartments and condos, retail construction, government buildings like courthouses, jails, and prisons, and higher education projects on college campuses. The company Mike helps lead has 1,000 employees and does almost $30 billion in annual revenue. Mike and I met over the years at various industry conferences and events around the country. We talked about life and kids and stress and holding it all together, long before we ever did a dime of business together. Since that time, you've shot up the corporate ranks, Mike, and I sure look forward to catching up and having a chance to learn from you. Mike Mazza, where are you today? And say hello to the people of Together at the Top.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm in Tampa, Florida. Lovely Tampa, Florida. It's an honor to be here with you today, Nick. I'm excited. This is one of the first podcasts I've ever done. So I feel both excited and a little bit of pressure.
Good. It's good to do things you've never done before and feel nervous. I love that. We have a long relationship, but we haven't caught up in a while. So I'm really looking forward to, as I say, leveling up with you. So let's set up what you're doing now in your current role. What does it consist of and what are your responsibilities now?
Sure. So like you said, I manage three of our business units. So Tampa, Florida, where I sit, we call that our mid-Florida operation. We do all types of heavy commercial construction. And then I manage our Texas operation, where we do both wood frame construction, which you see in apartments, and then also heavy commercial. And then in our California market, we spend most of our time in Southern California working on governmental work there. So we're blessed with a lot of great teams. And so my key role is to just help make sure everybody gets the resources they need and stays inspired.
So in pre-production, you describe yourself as a camp counselor, which is not something I've heard before. What do you mean by that, Mike? I assume it goes with what Moss said about you when they announced you as president, which was, quote, Mike's ability to lead and inspire teams has helped fuel our organizational growth. Say a little bit more about your camp counselor role.
Yeah. So I really enjoy people. I enjoy helping people achieve who they want to become, not just at work. So if you ask me what my why is, my goal is whenever the day is I'm finished with my career. I don't need a big retirement party. I would just love for a few people to tap me on the shoulder and say, thank you for helping me become the person I wanted to be. And what's most important there is it's not just work, right? It's becoming the most well-rounded person you can be. So I approach all business challenges as more of a people challenge. Let's work together to figure out how to come up with a solution that feels good to everybody. So that I kind of got tagged camp counselor because, if you think back to your days as a kid going to camp, that camp counselor not only was the person in charge to send you to certain activities, but it was also the person in charge of making sure you got what you needed. Were you doing okay? How you feeling? You fitting in? You missing mom and dad? So that's kind of the role I play.
Yeah, the baseline is a little bit of caring, right? Or a lot of bit of caring, frankly.
If you care, everything else seems to fall into place. Everybody wants to feel cared for. We all do.
I had so much fun in that 15-minute pre-call we had, the pre-production call, because you right away took me to a no excuses part of the conversation. I mentioned recruitment and retention to you, and right away you sent me to my notepad and pen to start taking notes. You said it's always about the people. If we haven't done enough to keep you, that's on us. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So we had a little conversation about, the competition that you have in business right now of good people. And it's really hard to find good people. I'm sure everybody listening has come across this at some point where, another organization attracts somebody to leave and move on to another job. And the instinct is to blame the company that's quote unquote stealing the person. I learned a long time ago from Bob Moss that you need to look in the mirror, and if somebody has stolen that person, it's on us. We didn't do enough to keep that person inspired, or we didn't have enough opportunity for them here. And we need to be okay that they made a decision to move on. And so, I've kind of used that as kind of one of my guiding principles as I've moved through my career, in that it's real easy to point a finger at somebody else, but we really need to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, what could we have done different to change that outcome?
And then I would think there's some percentage, maybe it's 5% of people that leave and they brief you on their offer and you end up shaking their hand, giving them a hug, wishing them and their family well because they got a great offer. And the genesis of is you hired them, you schooled them up, you put them in a great position, and they caught somebody's attention. In this particular case, even though you're sad, maybe you're congratulating them and realizing you had some part in raising them.
Well, it goes back to, do you truly care about the person? If you truly care about the person, it's bigger than just their responsibilities, their career, where you're at. It's what's best for them long term. And if you truly care, yeah. We've had a number of folks that have come to us and said, here is this offer. I don't want to leave, but what should we do? And we say, is it better for your family? Are you running to something, not away from something? If the answer is it's better for your family, and yeah, you're running to an opportunity, you got to go do it. Don't have any regrets. Go all in and make it work.
When you've lost somebody you didn't mean to lose, are there any common factors you've noticed where, boy, I got to stop doing that, or I got to stop micromanaging, or I've got to listen better on the travel? I mean, I don't know what it is, but any common denominators, Mike, where you've lost people and been thinking, boy, oh boy, I got to figure that part out?
What's amazing is we've been really fortunate that we haven't really lost people. People rarely leave for money. Most of the time, it's either they don't feel like they're part of something, or their direct supervisor doesn't have their best interest in mind. And the third one is they've advanced in their career and they've kind of hit a ceiling where there's nowhere for them to go. And most of the time, people are leaving because they've been trained, they've been challenged. We empower our folks to take on more and more responsibility, probably earlier and faster than maybe they think they're ready. The flip side of that is it also gets them ready to take the next step. And sometimes it's just better for folks to move on to another opportunity. And what's interesting is we have a fair amount of folks that leave and end up coming back as well, right? So if you approach the journey like, look, this is just the next step, not the end, a lot of times people will come back. So it's all in how, like anything, it's all in how you handle yourself and handle that. And look, we help folks that have left us that aren't coming back when they have a career challenge, a question. We're an open book. If you were part of the family and you're no longer here, you're still part of the family.
It's impressive. You're happy for them they leave the company unless they did something fundamental to get walked out of the company. So when you're building teams, for example, I have a guess of, and I want to hear from you about what you need to have on your team, but what are some of the things, Mike, you can't have on your teams? They have you call them in your office, or, you have to take some proactive action. What are some of the things you've seen that really cause you heartburn?
Number one, personal agenda. If you're not capable of buying into the team, that's going to be the biggest problem. And people sometimes confuse buying into the team as you have to just say yes. No, we want people who are interested in healthy conflict. But at the end of the day, when the team makes a decision that this is the direction we're going, we all leave the room and move in that direction. You can't have somebody that leaves the room, and runs a personal agenda, because that just contradicts, the leadership team and the mission that you have. I have a favorite saying that conflict without trust is just politics. And we all know what that feels like. We all know how that feels when you're sitting in a meeting with somebody and you can feel them pushing a personal agenda. That is probably the single most disruptive thing to progress and a team buying in, is somebody who just can't get on board.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. 2 is caring. We touched on that already. You have to care about people. And sometimes people misunderstand caring. Not everybody cares at the same level. The expectation is not that every single person knows every single thing about each other. But we all know what caring feels like. You can care at the surface where people still know that if you needed something, you're there for them. And so caring is key to being on a team. And then I think the third thing is being curious, being open to learn and understand, there's different ways to do things.
Yeah, very good.
And that's a hard thing. Yeah.
Mike, you lead your company's business in several big states, as I mentioned. Each state has really enough diversity in them to be small nations. How do you work across state lines and different cultures and even different industries?
I think the key is, I like to phrase it as we're a guest in their home. So we don't look at it like crossing state lines. We have teams in each one of those states that live, work, and play in those states, in those cities. And you have to become a fabric of those cities to really understand what makes them tick and really to be successful. And it's not just about taking. When I say take, mean it's not just about building the projects. It's about giving back. It's getting involved in that community, getting involved in, the charities that drive positive change in those communities. And so we don't cross those teams. We have teams that sit in that region, in that state, in that city, and that's where they stay.
Tell me about the networking in those areas. I understand you act as a guest and you're in their home, but you, for example, because that's who we're interviewing, turns out, you, for example, traversing states and different industries. I mentioned at the four retail and
Yep.
universities and prisons and jails and ballparks. And I saw you did the Tampa Bay Lightning practice facility. I mean, how do you network for all these things in different states and different verticals altogether?
I guess it kind of goes back to that root of caring. I approach each one of these places as an opportunity to learn and get to meet people. And so whether you go to networking events or, you take a meeting with one client developer, I love, and sometimes I think I frustrate people because I'll go to a business meeting and it may be 30 minutes before we ever talk business. I always want to get to know the individual. I want to know their interests. And one of my favorite things to do is ask folks, what's your favorite restaurant? What's your favorite, park to go to? And what you'll find is people have a great sense of pride of where they live, as they should. And so that's how you get to know folks. And then through that, you end up finding out, this is my favorite golf course. And I have a good friend that's a member there. Well, you want to go play that? Or this is one of my favorite parks to go hang out at. And you go find out that 3 other people like that same park. So I kind of let it grow organic. I've always struggled with I don't know what I always call it kind of the fake setup. It's not an organic thing. Somebody sets you up and says, do this, go here, and you'll meet that person there. I kind of like to go the opposite direction and just let it kind of happen.
Yeah, I do a fair amount of coaching in this space because it's natural for you and you called it organic and it is for me as I've grown up. But you have lots of people that come from the field, for example, and now they're in business situations. They don't have instinct for that. What would you tell that person at a lunch when you've observed, for example, they haven't said nothing at a client lunch 2 or 3 or 4 lunches in a row? What coaching might you give as a camp counselor?
Well, we all feel the pressure of sitting in a meeting and feeling like you have to say something. And then what ends up happening is you're trying to come up with something that isn't natural or intuitive to you. So the single biggest piece of advice is you don't always have to speak. Listen first. Approach it like a conversation. You're getting to know somebody and listen, and then ask an authentic question when you hear something that interests you. How easy is it if somebody is talking about a restaurant or a food and it happens to be your favorite food, right? It doesn't matter if you come from the field, office, white collar. If you like lasagna, you like lasagna. And so ask.
I like lasagna.
Of course. And so ask where's the best lasagna? What makes it your favorite lasagna? And before you know it, you've got a whole conversation happening with no pressure on having to come up with a statement, and you can be you. And that's the key.
Except for the person doesn't like food and I said it and they're just looking at me. What do I do then?
Well, then ask them what their interests are. Everybody's got an interest. What do you do when you're not sitting at work? What do you do when you're not here at lunch with me? What brings you joy? Everybody loves to talk about what brings you joy. I guess there's a small percentage who have no joy. And so you'd have to come up with another question. But then maybe you have an opportunity to share with them what brings you joy. And maybe they'll leave that lunch, finding something that brings them joy.
I love that question. That's a great one. What brings you joy? I tend to go to, what do you do for fun? Do you have a family? Where are you from?
Yeah.
But the restaurant one I love, and I really like this, what brings you joy, because it's ubiquitous. Anybody should be able to answer that, almost anybody. And if not, you find out they're super grumpy, and that's good to know too.
Yeah. And it's fun to determine how people define joy, right? I mean, you find a lot about somebody if joy is sitting at the soccer field with their kids all weekend, or joy is I travel Europe, or I mean, that opens up such an enormous amount of opportunity to learn. Somebody asked me this question, how do I do this? How do I go to one of these events or sit at dinner? And I said, approach it like you're just getting to know them. What would you do if somebody said, there's somebody in the room, go find out a little bit about them? You'd approach it very differently, right? You take the pressure off of yourself to ask the perfect business question, and you would just go up and say, hey, I like your shoes. That's a cool belt. Where'd you get that belt? I mean, people want to connect. Even the grumpiest people still love to connect. So have some courage and try to connect.
Yeah, I like to be a safety net too. I like to go with a plan, because especially if I don't know who I'm meeting or I don't have a thick relationship, it's not totally uncommon to go, how you doing? And you get, good.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on with you? Not much. I'm like, boy, I better have a plan for this lunch or this meeting. So whether it's a podcast, a coaching session, a business, say lunch or dinner or a meeting, where I better have something to say. And I want to have a script. And I love the scripting you just did. I'm going to probably adopt that for myself, frankly.
I love that. Yeah.
What brings you joy, Mike?
So what brings me joy is my family, number one. Love, 3 kids, all 2 in college, 1 out of college. So, the time spent with them is more limited now. So you got to cherish those moments. My wife definitely brings me joy. And then helping people. I love coming to work and helping folks solve challenges and working through things. That's my joy. And then if I'm not doing those things, I'm probably on a golf course somewhere finding joy there.
Making double bogeys, looking for your ball in the trees.
Yeah.
Too soon?
No, it's a little soon.
We appreciate your time. If you like what you've heard so far, do me a favor and leave a 5-star review and share with your friends. We'll be right back. The law firm of Scholes, Brick & Rogaski is a go-to partner for me. I work the most with partner Michael Rogaski. I go to them for business contracts, strategic legal counsel to maneuver through our round complex business situations, HR and employee issues, startup needs, intellectual property protections, collection matters, and recently the purchase or sale of a business. I really like the fact they tell me if they're not the best fit, and they give me a warm referral if I need it. Also, unlike so many attorneys, are totally level-headed and calm. I've experienced it like their slogan says, small firm service, large firm result. Contact Michael Rogaski at sbrlawsd.com. Kathy Olson at Ships and Trips is as creative and as willing a travel partner as you can find. These days, you can plan a lot of trips on your own, but for those trips that require more intricate planning, tons of time, or local contacts and savvy, Kathy's the best. My family and friends have worked with her countless times in every travel country, setting, and season you can think of. Contact Kathy with a C at shipsandtripstravel.com. All right, let's take this family thing and jump off to some of the more difficult parts. Let's start with business travel. Being away from home, bad eating, going out to dinner every night, not exercising on the road. What have you learned? How have you experienced business travel? And what tips do you have for dealing with it or even dominating it, Mike?
Well, I loved your comment about you got to have a plan for a meeting. I think you have to have a plan for business travel as well. And I think you have to be smart about how you map out travel. And I'm still learning this because I still am not, have not perfected it. You got to give yourself some, our CFO here calls it me time. You got to give yourself some me time. It's okay to schedule blocks of time where you have nothing on the calendar, but reading, walking, whatever it is. So when you travel, sometimes you have the tendency to fill your schedule full. So don't do that, number one. Number two, use if you're flying, use that time to better yourself, whether it's watching great podcasts, whether it's reading a book, whether it's catching up on a TV series that you just don't have time to watch. I mean, use that flight time not as a miserable time on an airplane, but use it as your me time. Do some stuff that you enjoy. And this is the one I challenge with the most, but try to stay away from back to back to back to back to back. One trip to the next trip. Give yourself a little cushion in between. And I think the other thing I found is if you approach travel and meetings, kind of like we just talked about, how do you have a hard conversation? What brings you joy? If you approach it like it's an opportunity to go see a new city, explore new things, learn new things, and meet new people, travel kind of becomes fun.
Yeah, I guess that's what I meant by dominate. It's kind of a weird word, but I mean, it can be a have to travel or I'm going to travel. And I really, really like the me time part. And I really like the mindset of explore, meet, learn. Some of it is in the mindset. What I thought you were going to say is while you're looking for joy, look out for pressure points or acute pain and try to steer away from that. That's what I thought you were going to say, but you went a different direction. And I really like the way you went.
Well, I think, look, it's travel is travel. It can be tough. The other thing I do, and some people kind of make fun of me, I use it as a great social experiment. I love watching how people deal with situations differently. Talk about a learning moment. Talk about how to better yourself. When a flight attendant spills a drink, when, somebody bumps into you, when somebody cuts in front of somebody in line, just watching the dynamic of one person will snap at them, one person will get grumpy, and one person will be more thoughtful and empathetic and help somebody pick up the drink. It's just, I play a little game sometimes, but you'd be surprised what you can learn watching that dynamic. I'm a big personal brand guy. I love personal brand. That's probably one of the key reasons I get called the camp counselor, because I love to coach people on thinking about their personal brand. And so one of the ways to learn about your brand is to think about how you would react in all those different situations. How would I react if somebody spilled a drink on me? I think those are fascinating experiments.
Why is brand so important to you and what's your brand?
I love to use this example. When people ask me, how do you think about personal brand? How would you figure out what it is? Think about it this way. Somebody sends out a calendar invite for a meeting. We've all done this. What's the first thing you do? You look at the time and then you look at the attendees. Who's invited to come to the, and you start scrolling down the list and you see Jamie's invited. Oh boy. Well, Jamie's there. Jamie's going to spend 15 minutes talking about himself and the fishing trip. And he's going to do everything he can to avoid engaging in the meeting. Then you see Kim. Kim's on the list. Oh, I'm excited that Kim's there. Kim is the most thoughtful, empathetic person I know. She's going to really listen and help us think through this challenge, right? So that's your brand. Your brand speaks way before you ever speak. And so ask yourself the question, somebody sees my name on the calendar invite. What are they thinking? What are they going to think about? Are they going to think, can't wait for Mike to show up? He brings positive energy and passion, and he's going to ask a lot of questions. Or are they going to think, oh boy, that guy's just going to want to be the one with the answer and he's going to step all over everybody? It's a fascinating concept to think about. And then if you want to go deeper, ask yourself, okay, the meeting's over. Then you walk out of the room. What's everybody think then? Is everybody thankful that Mike was at the meeting? Did he bring value, or did he sit in the corner and say nothing? Or even worse, did he detract from the meeting?
Really good.
And you think about those things, that's how you identify kind of what your brand is. I would say my brand is bringing energy and passion and making sure that teams leave meetings with thoughts and goals and are kind of unified in where you're headed. And brand can be anything, right? Anything that resonates with you. And the worst thing is to try to create a brand that isn't authentic to you. You can't fake it. You got to decide what your authentic brand is.
What's an example of a fake brand you've seen? Is it dress? Is it words people use? Big timing people? What's inauthentic branding that jumps off the page where you know it's fake branding or inauthentic branding?
Sure. You're sitting at a reception and somebody walks in the room and starts running up to people to shake their hand or introducing themselves. But before the person has a chance to say their name and connect, that person moves on to the next person. Are they really bringing a genuine, I want to get to know you? Of course they're not, right? I mean, that's just somebody faking it. Another example is, somebody who comes in the room and is continually trying to push the answer, participate in the conversation without enough context. Again, that's a brand, right? That's somebody who wants to be either a know-it-all or who wants to be heard, as opposed to the person who sits and listens and may not have the answer, but asks thoughtful questions to help drive the dialogue or the conversation. I mean, if you approach life thinking about personal brand and observing, I tell people that the easiest way to learn what brand you'd like to have is to just watch other people's behaviors. And some of the best mentors I have and have had in my career, I call them negative mentors.
Absolutely.
They're not positive mentors, right? They are people who have misbehaved or acted inappropriate, and you watch the impact or the wake that leaves. And that, I think, has framed me more than anything.
Drinking is an example of that. For me, we've traveled a lot around the country, not necessarily together, but I've seen you at a lot of events, and I've been all over the place, and I've seen, how drinking affects people's brain. I mean, God knows I did enough of it, but I think if I made mistakes, it was, one or two at the most, and they were mostly behind the scenes. But I've seen a lot of people silly muddy their brand with just irresponsible drinking at work. I don't mean on the job. I mean at a work, a function, essentially a conference, a training conference. It's no bueno. But what are your thoughts on drinking at work?
Well,
or conferences?
Yeah, it's the premise of what you're doing. Are you at this event for solely fun? Or are you at this event to work on a company initiative, to meet people, to network, to help advance your organization? And so I think if you accept that, the rest becomes pretty simple. You can go to the event, have a cocktail and meet people. And then if your thing is to have a few more cocktails, then you do that outside of that. You don't need to intermingle those two at the same time. And look, we've all seen it. We've seen some people that are very engaging and have this empathetic, caring brand. And then all of a sudden, 2 hours into the cocktail reception, they've transformed into somebody completely different. And so I think, it's back to looking in the mirror. You got to know who you are, and you got to understand the environment you're in and what you're trying to get out of those exchanges. And it's common sense. I had a grizzly general superintendent early in my career. In construction, you've got kind of this mingling of field and office, and we would have these corporate events, and he would get everybody that worked on his job site together before the corporate event. And he would tell everybody, so 2 drink max, you're not allowed to have no third drinks. If I see anybody having more than 2 drinks, I'm going to take you out myself. And so somebody asked him why. He said, because 2 drinks over a 3-4 hour period, you can relax and have some fun, but it doesn't cause a problem.
What do you think of that?
Look, I think everybody knows what is appropriate for them. What I would say to you is those situations, the end game isn't to drink as many drinks as you can drink. The end game is get to know people, connect with people, and help yourself and others advance whatever your mission is. And I don't think those two go together.
Yeah. I like the general rule of 2 drinks per. I've heard that before. I hadn't heard it before. I heard it the first time, and you just said it a second time. I kind of like it. I mean, people can style it to taste a little bit, but I'm going to guess you've had conversations in your office, in your counselor office. I've had lots of business coaching conversations with employers trying to figure out how to talk to the employee that had 7 drinks or submitted a receipt from golf for 7 drinks, and or the admin comes in and say, hey, did you notice that he had 6 drinks at the thing? Like, oh, I noticed. If you think people are noticing, I would suggest for people to have a plan, have a behavior plan, have a plan for when you're probably going to leave, have a plan for who you want to meet, what you're messaging. Going to these big things and just showing up, I think, is a mistake, especially around drinking if you have any propensity to not handle your liquor well.
Yeah. And so that's why sometimes the 2 drink works, because it's very specific, right? It's easy to quantify. I think the other thing is you're learning to go to these events, do some research on who's at the events. Come up with 10 or 15 people that you think would be great to meet, that you could connect with, that may help with whatever your mission is. You may not connect with all 15, but if you make a list, approach that. It becomes almost like a game to figure out where they are and how to connect. And then you find yourself not worried about those 2 drinks, right? You're trying to get to know some people that you want to connect with. That's another good piece of advice I was given kind of early in my career was don't just show up and wander around. To your point, Nick, show up with a purpose. Show up trying to meet some people that you want to meet.
Yeah, this is great. I'll tell you, I have a note on my desk. I keep Nick notes. My last episode was called Nick Notes, but I also keep Nick notes for myself because I get to talk to smart people like you all day. Maybe not all as smart as you, but one of the things I heard recently was podcasting as a way to supercharge my learning while also aiding others in that same pursuit, because that's exactly what we're doing. Some of the ways you're discussing these things like brand, I'm very brand conscious for myself. I talk, coach, teach to brand, but I've not thought about it in some of the ways that you talk about it. Like, for example, looking at who's going to be there and what does this person bring as a representation of the brand? What do they say about you when you leave? Like, that's really next level thinking. And I haven't thought about it that way. So I appreciate the ability to learn from you, quite frankly.
Well, and here's my favorite thing. So if you approach it, what are they going to think about me when they see my name on the list? And what do they think when I leave? And then if you're being honest with yourself, ask questions. What do I think they think when they see my name on the calendar invite? If you're being honest, they may not be the same.
Yeah.
What you're hoping they think is sometimes different than what they really do think. And so the key to learning is being honest with yourself about who you are and what you need to work on.
Yeah, really good.
And once you identify that, there's so much out there, like your podcast and books that can help people figure that answer out. And everybody's different, right? There isn't one size fits all, and human beings are wired very, very differently. And like I said before, you got to be authentic. What works for one may not work for you, and that's okay.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about conferences, and some of that's because you and I met on the road and we connected around family issues and stress issues, and frankly, even some of these drinking issues. Talk to me about role of family in your work life, and not just now, Mike, when you're, president of big markets, but where you were coming up and the pressures of family. Tell us how you experienced that, and also if you're willing to share any lessons like you did on planes or for travel, that's really useful as well.
I think you have to be okay saying my family's important. And that doesn't mean that your career is not important. And I think you have to prioritize. I hear this work-life balance conversation, and it can be a tough one, right? So as you're coming up through your career, you're struggling with, how do I balance these two things? And what I would say is think of it differently. Scott Moss loves to say work-life demands. So different than balance, because it's sometimes hard to find balance. And if you're searching for balance, you will sometimes be very disappointed when you can't find it. But what you can do is look at your demands and make sure you're prioritizing what matters. So for example, when we had young kids, if I had to work late, I would leave, bring it home with me, take a break, make sure we had dinner as a family, made sure we did whatever you needed to do after dinner. And then after the kids are in bed, I'd go back and finish the work, right? I mean, so I owe a lot to my wife for prioritizing the family dinner, right? That was how we prioritized our connection. And then when I was traveling, I would always make sure there was time set aside to get on the phone with the kids and check in on them and see how their day went. So I think you have to, again, back to this look in the mirror, prioritize what's important to you and be courageous enough to say, no, I'm going to make this work, knowing we all have career demands that we can't just push aside. But there are ways to do that. And then I would also look, everybody's a little different, but my wife and I, we have what we call staff meetings. We go to breakfast once a month where it's on the calendar, it is set. So, maybe it's, somebody you want to connect with, a brother, a sister. It can still be the same thing, and just treat it like a calendar invite and commit that it is important enough to me that I'm not going to say I'm going to do it and then let 3 things get scheduled that cancel that out. No, if it's important to you, it's important to you.
I want to amend your motion. So your suggestion is to call the date night a staff meeting. I'd like you to call your staff meetings date night.
Well, be careful. I didn't say that.
See how that works in the office.
That didn't take the place of date night. That was in addition to the date night.
Okay, gotcha. Copy that. Let me scratch that out of my notes real quick.
Yeah. Come on now.
We appreciate your time. If you like what you've heard so far, do me a favor and leave a 5-star review and share with your friends. We'll be right back. Three Bridges Consulting did the video on the recently rebranded nickwarnerconsulting.com. I really love the video because it helps me sell by speaking directly to my prospective clients. Dennis and Sean at Three Bridges Consulting are high-level storytellers for the purpose of helping my prospective coaching clients understand what differentiates me from the pack. A recent new coaching client literally said to me, "You don't need to sell me, Nick. Your video sold me. I understand what you do and how you work with me as a client." That is a true story. I love that. Contact 3BC at threebridgesconsulting.co. Ken and his team at Connect Strategies head up my post-rebrand digital marketing campaign. I'm moving up the rankings for business coaches and consultants quickly. Connect is 20 years in the business, and I feel like they're really focused on my account. I refer business coaching clients to Connect too, and I get really good reports on result, professionalism, and drive. Thank you, Connect. Contact Ken at KNECHTstrategies.com. Hey, so I mentioned you grew up in one company. I mentioned it before. That's pretty unique, especially this publication. So according to the business publication, and this is quite the name, but it's actually true, mymissiontoescape.com, there are several reasons to stay with one company: specific expertise that fits perfectly, better setup for internal advancement opportunities, and the convenient, steady paycheck. But there's also cons, such as career complacency, limited exposure to different systems and methodologies, and salary limitations. Why have you stayed with one company for 20 years? How do you go from entry-level-ish to president of the Americas, essentially, at least the biggest states in the America? How does that happen? And why did you stay?
It starts with people, right? So out of school, I worked for a large corporation, but it was led by the most inspiring individual I've ever been around. That individual left that company and started his own company. And it was about the people. Again, this goes back to caring. It was an enormous company. He met people constantly every day. He would remember who you were. He'd remember your family. He was invested in that family. And so you feel that. So when he started his own company, there was no question in my mind, I belonged at the new company. And that's why I've been here for 20 years, is we're empowered to run the organization thinking about the people first. And it's easy to say. People do that all the time. They talk about our people are first. It's hard to do it. It's hard to make sure that people have the resources they need. They have the support that they need. They have an ability to voice opinions, even if they are contrary to a decision that was made. People need to feel empowered that they're part of something that they can impact and affect. And that's why I'm here, is that we're allowed to do what we know is right. And I learned a long time ago, if you take care of the little things, you do the things the right way, all the other stuff follows. When you worry about results, that's when you start to have a problem.
You're going to hate this because I know you want to talk about other people besides you, but you said yes to the interview. So I'm going to put this quote out, watch you squirm, and then I want to hear you describe why they say this about you. Your CEO, Scott Moss, said, quote, "From the moment that Mike joined Moss, he's elevated every project in which he's been involved in and embraced our core values." Why do they say that about you? And what are the core values?
So our core values are empower to create the exceptional. So we want our people to wake up every day knowing they can make a difference, and they have the power to make a difference. Do what's right. You don't need permission to do what's right. And I get fired up when I watch people make a difference, right? I watch somebody step a little further outside of their comfort zone, be courageous enough to do something different. And I'm standing there to help them in any way I can. We talk about honor relationships. That's back to that caring. And I'm big on, you heard me say family. I'm big on team. I grew up as a team sports guy. I don't think you do anything by yourself, right? We're all successful because of other people. Entrepreneurial spirit. One of the things you have to do is have that fire burning in you to do more, do something different. And you got to have contagious energy. I think one of the reasons Scott says that about me is I tend to be a passionate person. I get excited. But our motto is work hard, be nice, and have fun. And I'm a believer in you can work extremely hard and you can be nice.
Are you nice all the time? What percentage of the time are you able to be nice at work, running a $3 billion company, partially, helping run a $3 billion company? Can you be nice all the time? Maybe you can be.
Let's define nice. You can be nice and still have conflict. You can be nice and still have a hard conversation, because it starts with the caring side of it, right? Being nice isn't just avoiding a hard conversation. Being nice is caring about somebody enough to give them the feedback that says, you're not making the grade. You're struggling here a little bit. Let's work together to figure out how we can make that situation better. The greatest gift you can be given is feedback. If you ask me what's the most important advice I can give somebody, give feedback and take feedback, ask for feedback, but do it in a productive way. So back to the be nice. To me, being nice is smiling when you're walking by somebody down the hall. It's also sitting with somebody who's not being held accountable and holding them accountable, but doing it in a productive way to help them get better. So yes, I can be nice 100% of the time. Now, we all are human beings. Am I nice 100% of the time? I struggle sometimes being nice. And that's that's part of our journey. Anybody who thinks they've got it all figured out is somebody you probably want to maybe keep some distance from.
Yeah, and I appreciate that.
I want to be around people that want to learn.
I appreciate that humility really a lot. I really do. What are you still working on?
I'm working on listening. It's a cliche, need to listen better, but it's really hard sometimes to avoid listening just to formulate your response. The true connection is listen to listen, then take a breath, then respond. And it's hard. I still struggle sometimes in meetings. I'm ready to start responding before somebody's gotten the whole way through. I think the other thing, I sometimes struggle still being a little bit of a rescuer. If I see somebody struggling a little bit in a meeting, I'll want to try to jump in and throw them the life preserver and save the person. And you don't want to be inhumane. But think back, I think back to my career, the best learning moments I had were when I failed. And I had to figure out why I failed and regroup.
Let's talk about your coach internally as we start to wind down. You've talked about being a camp counselor and caring a lot and kind of the mentoring role. My words, not yours. As you know, I'm a professional business coach, and I'd really love to hear your thoughts on some of this. So just to set it up, Mike, according to LinkedIn's 2019 Workforce Learning Report, 94% of employees say that they would stay at a company longer if it's simply invested in helping them learn. There was a Deloitte study that showed the same thing recently, that people really value learning and being invested in. What's your views on that? What do you do around that in your company?
I would say, number one, it's absolutely critical. You want people to be continuous learners. And so I think having some form of coaching, mentoring is essential for anyone to advance in their career. And so I've had both formal coaches and still have a formal coach, also mentors. And what I would say to folks is you want more than one mentor. You want as many mentors as you can have. And so, if you're early in your career, take the initiative, own your journey, identify the folks that you believe resonate with you, connect with you, or that you want to learn from, and approach them and ask them to be your mentor. I mean, you can set up a monthly lunch with somebody, and you take the initiative to create an agenda. You take the initiative, send in advance 3 questions and say, let's go to lunch for 1 hour. Let's talk about these 3 items. Make it very easy for that person to help you. And people, for the most part, would love to help folks learn in advance, right? So that's an easy way to get coaching. And then what you'll do is when you start to do that, now you'll start to figure out what you need, what else you want to grow, and that'll just help further define, where that coaching goes. And then there are tons of resources out there between books and podcasts to also give you coaching. So I think it's essential. I think I've been blessed with many mentors and many coaches that have truly kind of helped me find my way, you being one of them.
Oh, I appreciate that. We learn from each other in this life. Really good stuff, Mike. I'm going to go over some of the things. This is my favorite part of the show. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages of notes. I just want to summarize some of my key takeaways. I'll use some of your words and some of my own words, but I really like when I asked you, what are you doing as a coach? What are you doing as a camp counselor, as you said? And you said helping people achieve what they can become. That's your why. Helping people become their highest level confluence of, I would say for myself, what they want in their business life and their personal life, and the abundance of caring. It's really hard to teach and train for caring, but if you have it, you can do a lot with it. And I'm really struck by your why. Preparing an agenda, personal agenda. I think that's really, really interesting. That's something you can't have in the team, because we want the term you used that I found was really interesting is we want healthy demands, or I might call it healthy tension. But then once we make a decision, we got to go forward. And so that's fine and good. But what it sounds like is we're going to bid on this project or we're not. And somebody's saying, boss, we're going to lose money on that. It's a bad idea. I don't like the location. This is not the A crew. I got a B crew. And we analyze all those factors and make a decision and go. And that person's on the job and they're pulling against the grain because they want to go back to that meeting to prove they were right.
Yep.
It's not they're bad people necessarily, but they're trying to make their case. We can't have it.
That's exactly what it is.
Comment if you want to. I see it all over your body. You want somebody to say, let's hear it.
Put something greater than yourself first, right? We're a team, and we're going to make what we believe to be the best decision with the information that we have. And we're all going to go execute at the highest level. And we don't need anybody coming back saying, I told you so, right? We're going to do the best we can and move forward. And we're going to make mistakes. And you're defined not by the mistakes, but how you react to the mistakes.
Yeah.
You hit it on the head. That's what somebody with a personal agenda feels like. They're more worried about being proven right than making sure they're doing what they can to help the team.
Yeah, absolutely. It's super problematic. I really like the way you talked about it. You gave me some new words for how to think about how do I socialize myself in different states. I have clients, and this is true when I was in governmental relations too, in almost every state in the nation. Now I have clients in a lot of different states, which is different because I'm not selling into those states. You're selling into public and private agencies, and treating yourself like a guest in their home and thinking about yourself as a guest in their state and asking probative questions. I really, really, really like, and I promise I'm stealing. I'm telling you I'm stealing, so it's more borrowing this question of what brings you joy.
Mm.
Anybody can ask that. It's a beautiful question. It's a friendly question. And you're going to get a great gauge in fact and in dynamic when you ask that question across a table, at a conference, at a dinner. I don't care. It's a beautiful question, but I really like this. I'm a guest in your house and I'm going to get to know you by asking probative questions.
We've all been around somebody that's shown up as a guest and then proceeded to tell us how it should work or how messed up the way you do things in this city are, right? I mean, that's the easiest way to not build trust. The easiest way to build trust is to sit down and say, coach me, help me understand how it works here.
Yeah. What's the best restaurant here? What parks do you like? I mean, all these things just great. I mean, I
Yeah.
haven't thought of those exact words. I've certainly thought of the setup, but I haven't thought about those mechanisms and those probative questions to get great information. It's not a game. I want to know because I care.
And the greatest part is you actually find really cool parks and really great restaurants out of it too. You now become friends with individuals, connected deeply, and you get to experience new things. It's incredible.
Yeah, I get to have this thick friendship with you where I check in every once in a while and I learn from you. But do you remember the first funny thing we hit on before we ever talked about kids' dress business?
Surf shops.
Surf shops. Somehow we came up with it.
It's the greatest place on earth.
And you help run a $3 billion company. And I'm a decently successful business guy too. And we didn't get to business for a long time. We sent back and forth stickers and hats, and we were getting to know each other and feeling it out and like slowly but surely getting to understand each other's environments and weren't in a rush in this particular case. And I found that really fun. And from there, it blossomed, a really substantive relationship blossom. We're not day to day or even month to month, but I know who you are and I'm getting to know you better through this podcast. We all are.
Listen, what I loved about the surf shop conversation was I'm big on little symbols that remind us of things. And who isn't happy sitting on a beach relaxing? So, every time you put the t-shirt from the surf shop on, or you have that sticker on the back of your backpack or whatever, it's just a reminder of, that Zen spot where you can take a deep breath and relax. And so I remember that moment vividly.
And I probably didn't ask you what brings you joy, or you asked me, but we came close enough to it to get to it. And it ignited a relationship that, that reunites today.
Absolutely.
I really like the practical part of the conversation we had on travel. Me time really caught my attention. I can recall coming down on an employee years ago who went to a conference and played golf by himself. And I was not happy about that because we had clients everywhere. So that might have been the wrong spot because there were lots of other clients around the course in the hotel. But it definitely gets my attention. I'm going to do some thinking about this me time thing because survival is a thing. I mean, I can tell you talked about not backing up trip after trip after trip, which there's a whole bunch of nuggets in this podcast. If the pattern holds, I'll listen to it 2 or 3 times and I'll pick some of the stuff off my bike and go, boy, he's right. Have I done that? I'd counsel against that. But me time is a really interesting point.
Say it differently.
Okay.
We individually know what it takes to be the best version of ourselves. And so you have to spend time making sure you're doing those things to make sure you're the best version of yourself, both for family, both for friends, both for work, right? People talk about trying to separate. You really can't separate. You're one human being and all of this stuff intermingles with each other. And so you've got to decide what helps you get to be the best version of yourself. And that me time is critical to just take a deep breath, slow the noise down, and think that stuff through.
Sure. I also think there's people listening that are thinking we're Pollyanna, that we're the bosses, and it's easy for us to do that. Because when I'm coming up, I'm not telling my boss, hey, I'm going to go grab a run. Hey, I've grabbed plenty of runs and plenty of gym time at 5 a.m, plenty of it. But I didn't disappear. But I think it's interesting. And we could probably do a whole show on this, frankly, is what words do you need to use? I would suggest use some words with your bosses and colleagues. Don't just disappear. To say, hey, one of the things I really need to be tip top is I need to be in bed by 10:30. So forgive me if I leave the bar early, or, hey, I got to get a workout in between this next meeting. Like, you guys will barely miss me, but expect me to be in my A game when I pop back up. I'm going to bounce for a minute, but don't just disappear because it's not that easy.
It's about setting expectations. It's about clarifying expectations and acknowledging you understand the requirements of the job. You understand what's expected of you to get work done. And so if you're able to verbalize that with a boss and then say, here is the things that are important for me to make sure I'm the best version of myself, I think people would be surprised how much that helps and how many times that will find a successful outcome where you can figure out a way to take care of both, right? There's always a way to get all of that done. But to your point, Nick, when you just disappear, it can feel like to somebody you're prioritizing yourself over your work, right? The key is making sure everybody understands you're trying to make sure everything is a priority. And how about approach it in a way, ask the boss for help. Help me understand the best way to make sure I'm taking care of what you need me to do, but also myself.
That's an interesting approach as well.
You've empowered your boss to help you with the solution.
Yeah, I loved our conversation on brands. I'm not going to replay it all, but I thought that was really good. I'm going to think more about that. I really like, how are they thinking about you before? How are they thinking about when you leave? What do you want them to take away? Again, I mentioned before, dress on time, drinking, language you use. I mean, swearing is another one for brand. I mean, I sit in plenty of other people's team meetings now, not your version of a staff meeting, actual staff meeting. And I hear way too many F-bombs. If everybody was swearing, it's one thing. I still don't like it, but it's one thing. But there's 2 people swearing, which means there's 15 people not. That's your brand. Everybody's paying attention to your brand is another way. But I'm with you on branding for sure. I apply it other ways also, but I'm going to adopt your how are people seeing me? How do I want to be seen?
And to be real courageous, make it public knowledge what you think your brand is, and then empower people to hold you accountable to that brand. After you leave the meeting, call somebody and say, how'd I do? And there may be some resistance to share initially, but if you ask enough, people are going to say, you lived up to it, or yeah, I don't know why you said these 3 things, but that really didn't feel like what you say your brand is.
Like nice might be an example, or like you talk about being nice and this night, Mike, that was not nice. We didn't hear it that way. Like,
yeah,
that's not how I meant it. Like, well, that's not how we took it. Okay, I'm really glad I asked for that feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was not inspiring.
No. Yeah. Takes courage though to ask for that feedback.
Yeah, give feedback, ask for feedback. And then I like continuous learning and mentors also. Again, we could do a whole nother show on that. I mean, you have mentors, I have mentors. You've been really successful. I've been really successful. I am a mentor, you're a mentor, but you bet your butt I have mentors, and I call them. And I think about what I call them for. I don't call the wrong mentor for the right mentor for the wrong issue. I try to match up, where can Mike help me? Where can Jane help me? Where can Matt help me? It's unbelievable to me. And again, I mean, I think I know some things about them, some things. The number of times you go, boy, oh boy, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
That's happened a bunch of times on this podcast, on this interview. I never thought about those words. I never thought about it from that angle, or I just cannot figure out how to get started on this. Can you just help me with get my synapses firing? I can't get out of first gear here. It's really helpful to have people you trust.
And I think it's having the courage to sit in a room full of people way smarter than you. It's okay, right? The goal is surround yourself both with people that are going to elevate kind of where you're learning, and also surround yourself with people who have high energy and are going to push you. And that's can be sometimes difficult, right? That puts pressure on you, but I think it helps you achieve your best version.
Let's leave it right there, Mike Mazza. You did a phenomenal job on this interview. A couple of times I forgot we were actually on being recorded and on the mic because I have notes and I'm really learning a lot. I'm trying to be true to my podcasting as a way to supercharge my learning while also aiding others in that pursuit. And you have done a phenomenal job in that. We cannot thank you enough.
Well, this was amazing. And thank you, Nick, for doing this. This is incredible. I enjoyed it.
Yes, sir. To our producer, Daniel Link, Riley Byrne with Podigy Podcasts, and our fantastic research assistant, Alex Warner, thank you very much. And we will see you next month on Together at the Top. Thank you so much for your time. Together at the Top thrives off listeners like you. To stay connected, follow our socials in the show notes and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We'll be releasing our show on the last Tuesday of every month. See you next time. At Nick Warner Consulting, we exist to coach and consult motivated professionals. I meet with you on Zoom in focused 90-minute sessions, working toward your goals and developing next-level business skill sets. My job is to add value to your organization and your career. To learn more, visit www.nickwarnerconsulting.com or call me directly at 916-765-3576.